Good evening.
Hi.
Good to see you all. Thank you for having me. I am not a public speaker. I am not a professor, obviously. I'm up here tonight, speaking to you about my experience, my life. Hopefully it's an interesting story, gives you some perspective on my main topic tonight, which is resilience. There are a lot of really talented people, and there are a lot of people who work very hard. I hope I can be one of those people that works hard, puts the time in to succeed. But without resilience, without the attitude of never giving up, failure is imminent. It's the reality. Life throws you curveballs. There's extreme highs, there's extreme lows. And I think my story over the course of what now has been a 12-year career, believe it or not, can give you some perspective. So I'll start at the beginning, if that's okay, the very beginning, and go through it all. And I want to keep it very lighthearted, have it feel conversational, so it takes the pressure off me. Otherwise, I might start sweating and it gets uncomfortable. But I'll start at the very beginning. So I grew up in Wyckoff, New Jersey, which is a small town in Bergen County. The northern part of New Jersey, you have no idea, it's fine. But it's a very humble place to grow up, especially if your dad is a minister, which mine was. Believe it or not, there's not a lot of money in ministry. So you have to live a very humble life. And it was actually good for my family and I, and we learned a lot about music as a result, because our passion at an early age was music. My dad was a music minister at a college in Dallas, which is where I was born. And then we transitioned to New Jersey, and he was the senior pastor. So at around 5, 6 years old, my love for singing, which was just what I did as a child, became more real when I went with my mom to a hair salon. Someone heard me singing that was seated next to my mom, and they said, "My son is doing Broadway shows. You should take your son to this manager, and he might enjoy this as well." So I went to go see this manager, and all I knew was pop songs. It's embarrassing, but Celine Dion was my favorite. Thank you. But Celine Dion was my favorite, but the manager said, "Look, there's not really a place for a 6-year-old kid to walk into a room and sing a Celine Dion song and expect to get cast in anything." So I went back and I learned a few Broadway tunes. Came back about 6 months later, and she said, "Okay, you're ready. We'll send you out of some stuff." So I went out for Les Mis first, which was the national tour. Around the same time, my dad decided to get my mom pregnant again. How dare he? No. So I actually got the part, and it was this crazy casting call where they brought in about, I'd say 250 kids, all very ambitious and, wide-eyed and excited about the opportunity to go on tour for Les Mis, and I got the part. And I'm with my mom and my dad right after they said, "It's yours if you want it." And my parents make the decision that it's right for us to stay back in New Jersey and not go on the road, because my mom is about 2 months away from having a child. In the end, it's the right call. But I'm devastated, as you can imagine, at 7 years old, thinking this is it. I blew my only opportunity to ever be in a Broadway show. About 2 months later, I auditioned for something else that was in New York City called A Christmas Carol with Frank Langella, who's a brilliant actor and just an amazing man in general. Showed me a lot of kindness and was just a real leader for that cast of children. There was about 12 of us, and there was 2 casts of 12 children. So the thing they did with the show is they had understudies for each role, the main roles of the kids. I was the understudy for Tiny Tim. And in the 9 years the show had run, there had never been a Tiny Tim that went on. Just so happened the year that I was in the show, the kid got sick, and I had to go on. But the brilliant thing about the management of the show is that they decided we won't do any rehearsals because no kids ever go on. So I went on Broadway with 2 hours rehearsal at 7 years old. And the spotlight came on, and it was this distinct moment I remember very clearly, because the conductor was this frightening man who had this frown on his face all the time. He'd be up there, and we just all were in fear of him. And especially in that moment when I popped up on the stage and was supposed to be singing, I forget what the tune was, but I looked down at him and the spotlight on me in front of 6,000 people and blanked. 16 bars of music, nothing. Just me standing there. No idea what was going on. And it's funny now, but in the moment, again, at 7, 8 years old, I thought to myself, I've ruined my life. My career is over. And that was the moment I said, stage fright will never get me again. It's not an option. I did the show for about 2 more months. I played Tiny Tim a few more times. And after that, I was in 3 other shows on Broadway. Annie Get Your Gun with Reba McEntire, a very famous country music singer, if you know who that is. I did Beauty and the Beast, played Chip the Teacup. Knew that would happen after I said that. Yeah. I also was in Les Mis again. I got my chance to be in Les Mis again. This time I was Gavroche, and I was the final Gavroche on Broadway. An amazing show that would actually become a part of my journey later on. So after that, this gentleman who was actually a family friend went to the church my dad pastored, was a chiropractor, and he would take our family in and adjust us and see us, he was just a great man. And he said, look, I know you recorded a song, because I recorded this song for a benefit CD that the Broadway community did every year. I said, I know you recorded this song. I'm going to give the demo to somebody that comes to me. He works at Sony Music. Didn't say what he did or didn't know what he did. He could have been the janitor. He could have been the head of the label. No idea. So he gives this demo to this guy that works at Sony Music. Turns out this guy is the head of Sony International Business Affairs. His name is Bob Bolin. He loves the song, calls my dad in for a meeting and says, look, I think there's real potential here for your son. I'm 11 years old at the time, by the way. I think there's real potential. I want him to come in and meet this guy, David Massey. So I come in, I meet Bob Bolin and David Massey, and I sing in the room. I think I sang Superstition, which I would, about 7 years later, go on to sing with Stevie Wonder at the Grammys with my brothers, the year we were nominated. But I sang the song in the room, and the deal was done right there. I signed with Columbia Records through Sony, and I began making a solo record. And I was writing, I was really getting into writing about things that were relevant to an 11-year-old kid. So a lot of inspirational songs, not a whole lot about love, but inspirational things. And one night, randomly, I decided to write a song with my brothers for this record. They'd started to show some interest in music because they fell in love with this Switchfoot record. It was called Beautiful Letdown. It's a great album. They fell in love with that. My brother Joe had done a Broadway show, La Boheme, Baz Luhrmann's production. And my brother Kevin had done some commercials, some really embarrassing commercials. So you do yourself a favor, go back online afterwards, search Kevin Jonas E-Brain commercial. It'll make your whole life. But we wrote this song. It was called Please Be Mine. And as we were writing it, I was fighting this feeling I had. This feeling that this could actually be something amazing. That there was some magic in it, and I didn't quite know what it was about it that could be so great because I was fighting it. Because at 11, 12 years old, I was living in fear that this opportunity that I had would be taken away, and that the folks would become 3 instead of 1. Selfish, very selfish. And so it did. About 2 days later, we went into the label and we played this song. They were excited. They flipped out. They were over the moon. There's not 1, there's 3. And we started making a record together. And it was this incredible thing where immediately, once I accepted that this was the right thing, because there is that moment you have to grow up and accept and acknowledge that something's undeniable, right? That there's magic in something. And I did, and we started making this record, and it felt great. Straightforward pop music, a bit of inspirational tone to it. None of us were quite old enough to be talking about love or other things that I think would have helped us progress in any way at that point. But then some things started to change within the label that we were at. Some of the key players started to move out, and new people came in and saw a different vision for us. Went from Jonas Brothers that was positive and encouraging to, we're going to be a punk band. Positive and encouraging to punk band, all within about 2 months, and I have no idea how it happened, but it just happened. And so here we were, in ripped jeans and band t-shirts we didn't know any songs from. People would ask, what's your favorite song? I'd be like, that one that you've heard once? And we were a punk band. And it can happen very easily, you know, where there's other influences, people come into the picture, have a different vision for what you're doing, and things change. I don't hold any resentment towards anyone for that, but it's a part of the process to get to where you need to be. We got dropped because the record didn't do well, because it wasn't authentic. And that was painful. So here I am at 13. Again, one of those moments where I said to myself, this is it. I've failed at 13 years old. That's the caliber that I was placing my expectation at. And really, in a lot of ways, my self-worth. So I had a choice. I could keep writing music and keep doing that and hope that something would happen. And again, I'll give you, you know, there was some magic about what we had done and a little bit of success. If we played a show, 1,000 people would show up. So there was enough to have some interest, but not enough to actually build a career on. So I kept writing music. My brothers and I kept writing music. And at this point, some things had changed with our family situation at the church. We had left the church. We were living in a 2-bedroom home with 6 of us in the family, plus our uncle. So 7 and 2 bedrooms. It's very tight. And it was a lot of pressure on all of us at that time, because we were also financially in the hole from having placed a lot of belief in ourselves and setting up our career, you know, paying musicians and studio costs, all these things that just add up over time. So I started writing this music, wrote a lot of songs in that small house, $200,000 in the hole, that would then become the record that was the first success for the Jonas Brothers. It's a self-titled album that we released on Hollywood Records, which became our home for about 7 years, 6, 7 years. And the moment we signed with them, things changed dramatically. And our whole world kind of changed. We moved out to LA. The single started to pick up. The song that I had written about my first real hardship in love, called SOS, became our first hit, I guess you could say, and it was very, very intense. Walking on broken glass. This was like at the peak of, you know, like alternative emo music pop, which I'm sure you all liked. Don't kid yourself. I know I did. But yeah, we were having our emo pop moment, and we succeeded. We sold a couple million copies of that in the US and traveled around the world and sold more there, and things just started rolling. We wrote another record called A Little Bit Longer, which was, the title track was a song that I wrote about diabetes and my life with diabetes. So a big piece of this puzzle is that in the same 2-month span, we were dropped from Columbia Records, and we had moved from our first home, and we were in this tiny house. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. We were on an anti-drug school tour. Those actually exist, by the way. Stay in school. And I started to see a change in myself, physically, and my attitude, and lots of things. The symptoms with type 1 diabetes when you don't know you're diabetic are that you lose a lot of weight, you drink a lot of water, you're very irritable. It's very complicated. Your hormones are all out of whack. I went to see the doctor. My blood sugar was over 900. It's supposed to be between 70 to 120. So it was critical, and I was in the hospital for a few days. So this song I wrote for our second record was about that experience, and I became more vocal about that and finding a way to raise my voice and raise awareness for diabetes and diabetes research. Became my passion, as well as the music and some acting projects and other things. So we released that record, and it was our most successful to date. We were nominated that year for Grammy, won a couple other awards, and it was an amazing moment. We also had these movies called Camp Rock and Camp Rock 2. So these very intense movies about camp. Yeah. Have you ever seen those movies? Yes. I watched them too. Great moment. We also did a TV show with Disney called Jonas and Jonas LA. That's the big picture topic here, right? Is life in front of people. There's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, and MySpace if you're ancient. But living your life in front of people is incredibly uncomfortable for many reasons. The first is this. It's that you live through your awkward stage in front of people, and everybody gets acne. Everybody's hair looks really dumb. Everybody decides that an Ed Hardy t-shirt is a good idea. There's lots of things. And for me, the hardest part of all of it was the emphasis on sex and the sex life. And how at 13 or 14 years old, because of a detachment to seeing someone on TV or on a computer screen, it was okay to comment on a 13 or 14-year-old's sex life. That's inappropriate. You wouldn't do that in a normal setting, but public life and celebrity take that away. So that was hard for me, and became a big topic for the Jonas Brothers as a brand, was that specifically. And it was hard for us. We all went through our own journey. You know, our faith started in one place as a family that was the first family of a church, you know, the pastor and his family, and transitioned to what's important to us, what's our belief system as individuals, and the journey you have to go on to decide who you are and what's important to you. And that was big for me, was figuring out who I was and what was important. You know, my upbringing at times could be judgmental towards lots of things. I don't want to get specific, but lots of things. And my view was that we're supposed to love, and all people should love. And it's about your relationship with God, and not necessarily rules. So that was my journey, and it was important to me. And I'm comfortable now, at 22, to say, I know who I am, I know what my faith is, and that's fine. And everyone can love and do what they want to do. And as it related to sex and other things, you're supposed to go on that journey on your own. And that's, I think, the toughest part about living in the public eye. And then the other element was the whole dating thing, which, wow, Google Images is it's painful. You can't escape the people that you've been with. Just remember that. Even if you're not in the public life, it's out there. It's all there. But I had a few public romances. And you know, it was strange. It was strange to have that be a priority for people to talk about, and it still is, because I thought my life was pretty boring. You know, I didn't really think that much of my 13, 14-year-old relationships, but apparently this was very interesting. And I think it was also because I wrote my music. I wrote my music for my brothers and by myself, so there was an element of who is this song about, or what is this journey about in this song or record, which I actually found to be fun. You know, I'd find ways to place people's names in songs without them knowing. I have a good friend, Demi Lovato, and we write a lot of songs together, and that was like our goal. It was like, let's find ways to like slide these references in that only the person listening will know. And it was fun. It was entertaining for us. But public life as a whole is strange. And it's about balancing that with art and not giving too much away so that there's an element of mystery as well. So, back to the timeline. A little bit longer is the album. Does very well. We released a 3D movie. Lots of this, lots of that. It was like a compilation of shots of all of us just like looking in the camera and pointing. Apparently we couldn't get enough of that. But we did the 3D movie, and then we went on tour, and then I made this side project called Nick Jonas and the Administration, which was sort of a blue-eyed soul, R&B tone record with guys that played with Prince and the New Power Generation, and someone that played with John Mayer, and our producer. And it was incredibly important for me because I think it started the ball rolling for me on discovering my musical identity. and dipping into some more of my influences, Prince and Stevie Wonder and the Jackson 5, and there was a lot of things that came out of that experience that helped me and shaped me as an artist. So my brothers and I released and recorded and released another record called Lines, Vines, and Trying Times, and then my brother Joe decided it was time for him to make a solo record. So he went on this journey, promoting a solo record and doing all that, and I decided I was going to dedicate my time to writing and recording for other people, producing, and it was fun. I got to work with some really amazing people who even showed me some more music that would help me and would help me grow. And in this time, there was lots of new faces. And the thing about being a teen phenomenon is that the lifespan is short. That's the reality. And if you just accept that, I think it helps. And that's kind of the mentality I took. It wasn't easy at first, but there is that element of fear that comes into the picture when you realize that it's hard to keep up when there's a new face and new faces. And so we came back together, my brothers and I, and we gave it another try. After all having gone and done some different projects, I did some acting as well, which I love. And I did a theater run over here in Les Mis, as Marius this time, not as Gavroche. And then we came back together, started writing and recording again. And this is where some things changed. And when I talk about resilience, this is where it comes in to all of this. Saw very quickly that there was a loss of rhythm with each other, and a real struggle to find our identity again as a group, because we'd all gone and lived such separate lives, which happens. That's life. You know, you spend a lot of time with people, and you need some separation. But when it comes time to come back together, it's hard to find that rhythm. So it was about 1.5 years, 2 years of really trying to make that work, until I reached a point of saying, I don't think this is working. You know, your family, I love you, but this is not right for us anymore. And I want to raise my hand and say, I don't think this works if we continue. Which is just about the hardest conversation to ever have with your family. And it was an incredibly tough 2 or 3 weeks. There was a lot of media emphasis on the breakup and what was happening, and some questions about drug use and other things, which were all untrue, but people just ran with it. And we struggled for a moment. It became complicated. But I knew within that I needed to step out and do my own thing and discover who I really was as an artist. And so that chapter of my life closed. So here I am at 21 years old, feeling like a failure because the music we'd released didn't connect. And I looked at myself in the mirror after about 3 months of traveling. This was like friends' weddings and extended holiday vacations and just so much traveling. I looked at myself and just thought, what am I doing? Probably a question a lot of you have asked yourself and will ask yourself. You know, when you leave this place and you're 21 or 22 years old, there's a lot of people out there, and this is where all of us can relate. It's a universal topic. A lot of people out there that will suppress you and not want to see you succeed, in the same way that I was fearful of new faces, new people coming into the picture and taking me out. But I will encourage you to stay on your course, because I had that moment. I thought about what I needed to do to succeed, and that at 21, I was not going to be washed up. That was not an option. I made acting a priority first, started there. Met with my management team and my agents, and I said, let's find a role that no one would ever expect me to be in, and I'll fight harder than anybody else for it. And the script came across my desk. I don't have a desk, but it sounds better that way. The script came across my desk, and I started reading it, and there was this role in there about this young mixed martial arts fighter named Nate Colina. And it was this incredible story about family and the complication of family, which was a topic that was very real to me at this point in my life. And I fell in love with it. I went in to read for it, and I heard later on that when I first went in, the creative staff for the show said, "There's no way we're casting Nick Jonas. No, we don't even want to see him." Which was what a lot of my life had become for about 2 years. No, we're good. I called my manager and I was like, "I'm so mad. So mad right now." But it was, there was a lot of passion in there. A few F words too. But and he said to me, "Stay under course. Don't lose focus. Use it." I was like, all right. So I went in and read. They did let me read. They called me back. They called me back again. My grandfather, who I was very close with, my name is Nicholas Jerry Jonas. His name was Jerry. My grandfather became very sick around this time, and he passed on the day of my final audition for this show. And this show is very heavy. It's very heavy, and the specific scene was about a father-son relationship being very complicated. So I went into the audition knowing that I'd have to leave right after to go to his funeral. And I poured my heart into this character with the guy that plays my father on the show now. And I got the show. So that was phase one of this rebuilding. I came back from the funeral, started recording music. I wrote a song in the first week of recording called "Jealous," which I just finished celebrating a #1 song in the US. Peaks and valleys. But there's a journey. And then there's a journey here. It's like playing catch up in different markets. And I was talking to some people before. I was saying, the different territories make it more complicated because you have to separate your time and travel. So I'm telling you all this now, and I feel like I've succeeded to a certain degree, but I know that there's incredible obstacles to overcome here as well. Perception to change, and just an overall necessity to continue to build. And so although I feel like I've succeeded, that drive to continue to succeed is still in me. And although I feel like I've been resilient, I know there will be more obstacles. And there will be for you too. There's a lot of really talented people in this room. And I've experienced in my 12 to 13 years now a lot of really talented people. But I've also seen a lot of them lose focus, lose their ambition, lose track of what is a priority and what's not. And I'm still here. I know that I'm still going to work harder than anybody else. And then I'm also going to have a lot of fun. I genuinely love what I do and feel like I'm really fortunate to get to do something that I love. That's the best feeling in the world. And I hope that for all of you. I really hope that after you've spent your time studying, staying in school, which I didn't do, but after you do that you're able to do what you love. You're able to find happiness, continue to stay hungry, and stay resilient, because you'll win. You definitely will. And I'll leave you with this last thought. Know that along the road, you will meet a lot of people. And you will impact their life in some way, and they will impact yours in some way. And just try to be a sponge and learn as much as you can. I'm 22. I've seen a lot of life in a short amount of time. Met a lot of really amazing people and have tried to do that. I've tried to look at everyone and learn what I can from them so that I can give more, continue to grow, and be willing to be a student, even at my moments of feeling like I'm at my best. So thank you for your time. Thank you for having me. And I think I'm going to answer some questions. But it's been a real pleasure talking to you tonight. Thank you.
So now we have time for a Q&A, so I'm just going to ask a couple of questions, and then this microphone will come round. So if you put your hand up clearly, and I'll try and pick a few, almost all of you. So you've just talked about your hugely successful career, having sort of sold millions of albums worldwide. I was wondering, what's been your proudest moment so far?
I think there are different milestones for different moments, you know. I think that being nominated for a Grammy and performing with Stevie Wonder was a really incredible moment. I've now performed for all the presidents since I've been alive, I guess, so that's amazing. I needed Bill Clinton, and I just performed in front of him, so. Those moments are great, but then also, you know, this success of this song, Jealous, but the overall campaign to get there, you know, was incredibly thought out and was a process, you know, and I feel like it was a team effort, and that's more meaningful than anything, is when you can work with people that you love to make something happen. And so those moments, I think, all stick out.
And you talked about sort of being part of the Jonas Brothers for so long, almost a decade. How does it feel going solo now? Do you feel lonely sometimes, or do you miss them when you're performing?
Yeah, I think the moments that are tough are more so the traveling and interviews and things where you can rely on other people. The performance aspect of it, I think, is an exciting moment because I'm singing music that I'm really passionate about and that I feel like comes from a really true and artistic place in me. And so that feels great, but it is just about really trying to not get, like you said, lonely or put too much pressure on myself.
And now we'll open up to the audience. Neve will pass the microphone around. So the lady in the middle of the...
Question, do you prefer stage acting or on-screen acting?
It's tough to say. I think that they're both very different. You know, the on-screen stuff, you have to wait for a reaction for months. And some of the stuff you can say and do on TV is very different to some of the things you can do on the Broadway stage or the West End stage. But I do love both. I feel like an even balance of both. The next theater project I want to do, for instance, I'd love to write. That's my next goal. So hopefully that happens in the next couple of years. But Kingdom as a starting place, and then other projects that I have coming this year are a lot of fun, and hopefully you're able to see them over here as well.
Lady on the front bench.
Okay, the first part of this isn't actually a question, but it's just quick. I just wanted to tell you, because I'm diabetic and I've been for about 10 years, and just how sort of inspirational it was to have someone young, like in sort of the public eye, willing to talk about that and to kind of tell people that they were living with it, just sort of, because people don't really do that, and I think it's important. So that was just sort of the first part. And the second part is, you said earlier about sort of Googling yourselves and the weird things you see on the internet. What's the strangest thing you've like come across about yourself on the internet? There are some really weird things about the Jonas Brothers out there on the internet.
Yes. You know, there was this whole story for a while that my brothers and I, this was real, like someone took the time to write a full 2-page article about this, that we had a mannequin that we traveled with. That we would dress up in the clothes we were going to wear the next day. And we got very specific. We had wigs for the mannequins and this whole thing's to match our own hair. I was thinking to myself, that would be so self-obsessed and insane to have a mannequin that actually I bought my brother a mannequin for his birthday with the article attached to it. I said, I knew you wanted one of these. But yeah, that was one of the weirdest things. And then there's also, you know, regularly the rumors that I'm getting engaged or that I'm dead. That's funny. It's news to me.
The lady just there on the front bench.
Okay, so I'm a big Broadway fan, and I saw How to Succeed back when it was on. And after hearing your story and compared to the character you played, which was Finch, how much of your life experience at that moment was going in? Because it's kind of like the story of not quitting and keeping going and trying to get to the top again.
Yeah, that show taught me a lot, that character. For those of you who don't know, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying is about a young man who finds a book that basically gives him all the tools he needs how to succeed in business. And he sort of pulls one over all the old businessmen's head and succeeds. And I think the similarities that I found in me and the character were his resilience, like I said, and his ability to stay humble and passionate, and although he had all the tools he needed, you know, it's still about getting out of your own way at times and not living in fear and not taking a step backwards for whatever reason. And that's the thing I love about the character, and that crucial piece to the journey for me in doing that show was a lot to do with the individuals I was working with too, the director and the choreographer, because it pushed me. I really showed up to rehearsals knowing that I'd have to dig in, and it was a great experience.
Hi. You talked a lot about like figuring out what you want to do and how we kind of have to be faced with that. Was there anything else you considered doing other than show business, or have you always been pretty convinced that that's what you wanted to do?
Yes, there was something. I really believed that I could walk on to a baseball team and be on the team. I was like, I can definitely do this. And I actually believed it so much that Joe Torre, who was the coach of the Yankees for a long time, which was my team, then became the coach of the Los Angeles Dodgers. He invited me to come to spring training with the Dodgers once, and I actually lived the life of a baseball player for a few days, and saw pretty quickly that I had a lot of room to grow. Yeah, and you know, I love the game and actually considered going to Northwestern University in Chicago, seeing if I could play there and study as well. But my life just took a different turn. I think if I did have to make a dramatic change at some point in my life, I would find a way to do something that I could love, you know, and be happy with whatever that is. But you know, I'm very thankful that I get to do what I love.
You mentioned the interest in your sex life as a 13, 14-year-old, which is weird. And yeah. I wondered whether you ever were aware of the media like sexualizing you, and if not you, particularly your famous girl friends, separate words, girlfriends, and how that affected you as a young teenager, and sort of how you saw that while you were going through it.
You know, I think it's about how much you want to see, right, and how much you let affect you as well. So I always viewed it as you can't control what people are going to say about you or your friends or your girlfriends or whatever it is. So you have to live your life and know that you're on a journey. You know, others didn't see it that way and found it very hard and turned to other things and a different approach to progress. And so I feel like for me, I just tried to stay in my lane. And you know, once I was comfortable enough with who I am as a person and how I feel about sex and sexuality and how much I want to talk about it, I didn't speak about it too much. And other people did, media and the public, but I just knew I had to go on my own journey.
Hi, how would you deal with like issues with privacy with like regards to fans, and have you got any kind of crazy fan stories?
Yes, quite a few. I had someone jump in the back of a car one time. We were in Germany, and we were leaving the venue, and it was one of those big vans, and so there was a big trunk space. And we got to the hotel. We started walking into the hotel, and our security went to grab our bags out of the back, and there was a fan stowed away in the back. She popped out, he grabbed her quick, and it was actually kind of frightening. More so because we were afraid she was going to say we kidnapped her, which we didn't. But yeah, that was one. And then there were lots of experience in that sort of crazy, you know, couple years of fandemonium, just of you know, people, mass amounts of people rushing and doing crazy things like that. You know, in the moment it seems like it'd be really fun. People are banging on car windows or like rocking a bus. but it's not. It's really frightening.
On that, what's the best gift you ever received
From a fan?
from a fan?
Donations to diabetes research, I think, were the best, the most meaningful. You know, that was such a blessing. But then there were actual physical gifts. I think I always really enjoyed like clothing items from the countries, like, you know, a football jersey or, you know, anything we could take away that was like meaningful to the countries we were in. Because I literally have a drawer in my house that's full of like hockey jerseys and football jerseys and all these things that, you know, I now have forever from my experiences there. And if I wear them and I get like photographed in them, my Twitter timeline blows up like, Brazil loves you! So it works out. It's always Brazil. They're the craziest.
Hi. Obviously, we've seen a few child stars and like sometimes Disney stars go off the rails a bit. How did you and your brothers like handle the pressures of fame and all the money that you have and stuff?
All the money we have and stuff. There's still time to lose my mind, so I know that. I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think it had something to do with the fact that we felt very fortunate to be in the position we were in. I think we reached a level of fame before we had quite reached the time put in to actually be at that level. You know what I'm saying? Like, our skill level may not have matched our level of fame yet. We had a lot of room to grow. So we were very fortunate and felt really thankful for that. But I think we also had parents who were around all the time, and our management team was there from day one. So everyone that was around us could keep us kind of in check. And we had each other, and we still do. You know, we're not in a band anymore, but we're brothers, and we see a lot of each other, and, you know, there's definitely tough love there.
Hi, so I wanted to ask you about your highly successful recent Calvin Klein-esque shoot,
Yeah.
and which has subsequently gone viral. So I was wondering, where's the idea come from, and how did you feel about doing that?
Got it. I was waiting to be asked about that. So basically, for this TV show Kingdom that I'm on, I play a fighter, and there was a lot of physical training that went into that as well. So I got pretty big, muscular for that, and Flaunt magazine came with the idea to do the shoot to kind of pay tribute to Mark Wahlberg. And as we were doing it, I really wasn't thinking about the fact that my pants were on the floor. I just was kind of rolling with it. And then afterwards I was like, oh, wow, that's what the photo shoot is. But I think it was kind of important, you know, to sort of just showcase who I am today, what I'm comfortable with, and I think even in maybe just this kind of conversational approach, you can see I'm a pretty laid-back person, and that shoot was you know, something that I think drove people to the music as well. And if it did become some sort of like an internet phenomenon at the moment, you know, it did its part in getting people to the music, and that's what's important.
Hi, you talked a bit about your faith and your journey like through it, and the fact that your dad was a minister. I was wondering, would you still identify as a Christian?
As a Christian? Yes, I think so. I think it's very tough for me to specify. You know, I think that I have a relationship with God, and that's how I view it. Because I feel like some of my views may not fall directly in line with all people's views from the Christian faith. But I do have a very solid relationship with God that's important to me, and my journey with faith will continue to grow, you know, and will evolve over time. And I think that's important for us to go on that journey and discover who we are. And, you know, I'm not really living in a way to be stressed about it. I think that I have to just go on my path and live my life and sort of know that my time with God is important to me.
Hi. So in the past few years when you've been touring, have you had time to go sightseeing when you're touring? And where's the favorite place you've been?
I have not really been touring that much in the last couple of years. I've spent most of my time in LA, but just recently, over the last few months, I've been on the road quite a bit, traveling. I love Paris. I think it's an amazing city, and love every time I go there. I also love London. Having spent a couple months there doing Les Mis and other things, I feel like I have some friends there I can see, and it's, you know, it's a great place. But I'm also a sucker for some of my American cities as well. Chicago is one I love, and San Francisco, and New York is my favorite. I lived there for 2 years, and I'm very anxious to get back someday and live there again.
You talked about your Disney days with a sense of distaste. Do you have regrets, or did you not like that you did that, or what is that all about?
No, I think I think it was very important of a journey, and I don't know if it was distaste as much as embarrassment at times. Just because you're 13, your hair is like this, and your nose is too big for your face. There's lots of things that go into it, and also I think in contrast to some of the material I'm doing now in the acting space, Camp Rock is supposed to be more for a child audience, and so it is by nature more juvenile, but I think it's great for what it is and was important to the overall journey. But yeah, it's more embarrassment. I'm sure if any of us look at our pictures from when we were 13 or 14, or videos we made or whatever, there's some embarrassment there. I'm gonna find pictures of all of you.
You talked about the transition going into acting and taking up some acting roles. Is that something you want to do more in the future, or do you think you're going to focus on the music at the moment?
I have a couple acting projects lined up. There's a new project called Scream Queens, which I'm going to be a part of, which is a Ryan Murphy show. He did Glee, An American Horror Story, A Normal Heart. And it's with a really great cast. It's Emma Roberts, Ariana Grande, Jamie Lee Curtis, Joe Manganiello. Some really great actors, and I'm thrilled to be a part of that. And then the movie called Goat, which James Franco's producing, which I'm thrilled to be a part of, about college life, actually. About partying mostly. No, I'm kidding. It's about that. But it's going to be a fun project. And then, yeah, there's lots of things that I want to do. Oh, and obviously another season of Kingdom. We got picked up for 2 more seasons, which is exciting. So, if I can be greedy and do both the singing and the acting, I'd be very happy.
Hi, I was wondering, I think that there are perks and consequences from everything in life. So I was wondering, do you have a favorite part about growing up and living under the spotlight?
A favorite part?
Yeah, or something that you like.
I think meeting so many amazing people is probably one, and looking back at my life already, and my high school years, I was doing some pretty incredible things and touring the world and meeting amazing people, and so there's an element of feeling like I was very, very lucky to get to do that, and knowing that I still had a lot of room to grow artistically is another aspect of gratitude that comes into the picture.
My question was about Disney, because Disney in a sense creates these teenage role models that fit a certain category of people, and once they evolve and naturally change, then there can be some issues that are created both for the fan base, who are like younger people, and for the person themselves. What are your thoughts about that?
I think you're right. I think everyone has to grow, and that happens naturally. I don't know that Disney creates role models. I think they create personalities and characters, and then it just so happens that there are real people that are those characters. I don't know that everyone, when they choose to be an actor, chooses to be a role model. That's an element that you have to decide for yourself, and I think everybody's different and is willing to do that and willing to hold that responsibility or not. I respect if people look up to me and thank them for that, but also I'm human and have my faults as well and own that fully. So I'm a role model to a certain degree, knowing that I am human, and so I think those that put too much pressure on themselves figure out very quickly that it's impossible to be perfect.
Do you have a role model yourself, or do you look up to your brothers at all?
to my brothers, please. They look up to me. No, I'm kidding. I do. I have a lot of role models, and it's continually changing as well. You know, I think that there are different people a part of your life for different reasons, and there are different seasons as well. You know, and I'm sure all of you have people that have come into your life and maybe are no longer a part of your life, but had real importance for you within that time they were there. But I think that, you know, my dad and I have always been very close, and he's been incredibly important to me and my management team. And also, my grandfather was really important to me. That was a very important person in my life, and still feel like I'm very close to him, and we have our own connection now.
Hi, sorry that was loud. As an artist, you clearly gain inspiration from a lot of different sources. I was wondering, who would you name as the top 3 or 5, you know, musical influences on your work?
I think Prince is a big one. I think Stevie Wonder. I love the Beatles. Paul McCartney specifically. I had the chance to meet him and perform with him a few times now, which has been great. Then there's some recent influences too that were really important for this record that I made. People like Frank Ocean and even Drake is somebody that I feel like I can pull influence from, and Jhené Aiko, lots currently that I like.
Hi, I was just wondering, you were talking a lot about all these famous people you've met. Do you ever get starstruck yourself when you meet people?
I had a moment with, I can't say who the artist is, but I actually tweeted about it right after it happened, but I had a moment with an artist that I really respect, that I love their music. And I went up to say hi to them, and I was like, hey, you know, I just want to say, your music's been really important to me recently, and I've been really inspired by some of the stuff you're doing. And, you know, all of a sudden he was just like, oh great, what have you been inspired by? I was like, I was not expecting a follow-up. Like, and I just stood there, like literally I just stood there for 30 seconds and just blank stare on my face. And then one of the song titles came to my mind, I just said it, and I was like, he knows, like, I'm an idiot. But I was so nervous to go up and say how much I respected his music and all this that I just blanked, and it was so embarrassing. But normally I don't get starstruck. Mostly athletes or Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig could make me starstruck.
So in the talk you mentioned Demi Lovato, who's spoken quite publicly about her mental health issues, specifically related to eating disorders. And I was just wondering what you thought about the way that the entertainment industry treats women, and whether those pressures that are put on women are kind of equally leveled against men, and how the gender dynamics work from your experience.
Yeah, I think there's pressures on all sides, and I think women have it incredibly hard at times. And in speaking to Demi, you know, I think that I've tried to be a friend to her in every way I can, and our journey was complicated for a moment as she was in her time of recovery and just finding a balance in her life. But she's given me a lot of insight as to some of those pressures, and I've felt them myself in my own way, and so I feel like it's incredibly hard, and you have to have the right mental approach to it, and the right people around you to keep you in the right mind frame. And for women specifically, you know, I think they probably have it the hardest, and I feel for them in that way.
So you mentioned that you write your own songs and you talk about your own experiences, and you kind of enjoyed that earlier. So would you be willing to share about the new song, Jealous, and explain if that relates to anything you've gone through?
Yeah. How bad would it be if, like, I didn't write Jealous? That'd be so embarrassing. I did. So I was out with my girlfriend one night, and we were having a good night out, having some drinks, having some dinner. Clearly on a date. If you looked at us, you'd be like, that looks like a nice date they're having. You'd say it just like that, too. But we were out, yeah, and I was in the middle of training for this TV show where keep in mind, I was about 15 pounds bigger muscle than I am right now, which I'm currently putting that back on. But I was also fight training all day, every day, so I was like hyped up, you know, ready to fight. And he kept looking over at her and just staring at her. And so I kind of noticed it once, noticed it twice. By the third or fourth time, it's a bit like, come on, dude, this is not appropriate, you know. And I found myself to get incredibly jealous. And I went in the studio the next day, started working on this one idea with these people I was collaborating with, and was stuck on this experience from the night before and was telling them all about it. And they were like, maybe we should write a song about that. It sounds like you need to get it off your chest. And I was like, it's a great idea. And so we wrote this song. And after it was done, I feel like it was actually therapeutic in a way. Like after the song was written, some of the jealous feelings that I had from time to time were eased by the feeling of knowing that when you really care about somebody, you go to the worst case scenario. You know, you fear the worst in that situation. And that's where jealousy comes from. Because, you know, in a lot of cases, it's in your head. And I feel like that's what became so relatable about that song, is that in becoming more personal in my own way and writing something that was a real experience, it actually became more universal and more people can connect with it.
Do you have any regrets in anything you've done, either in your career or any personal regrets at all? Sorry, I realize it's a quite...
We're going to finish on a high note here, I guess. I'm just kidding. Yes, of course. I think we all do, you know, and I think my biggest regret is living in fear for a period of my life where I was trying to, as I was talking about before, trying to be perfect and uphold a certain image, and realizing at a certain point that that's impossible, you know, and that everyone's entitled to their own opinion of who you are or who you should be. And I was crippled by fear in a lot of ways, artistically and as a person. And that's my regret, is just living that way for so long and stressing about things I shouldn't have been stressed about. I take the approach now of, well, what happens, happens, and I just have a good time, and it works out a lot better. And I'm freed up emotionally and spiritually and creatively.
If I could ask you all to remain in your seats whilst Nick and his team leave, and if you'd all join me in thanking Nick Jonas.